The thing about transparency is that first we should establish that it's a sort of global movement, right? So there are people all over the world who would like to have more information about how much money their governments are taking in when they sell oil or when they open a mine, but also, so that's on resources generally, but that's true of agriculture, it's true of fisheries, so that there's a lot of money moving between large corporations and between governments, and a lot of activists, people in democratic places and people in less democratic places, really would like to know more information about that so that they could work to improve the conduct of things that are happening in a mine, so that they could figure out how much money is available for local community development, to build infrastructure, so that they feel like they're benefiting from, say, the extraction of oil or the selling of a lot of land for agricultural production. There are a huge number of initiatives in the last few years to get many different kinds of companies and different kinds of governments to collect and verify and then publicly release lots of information. Some of the kind of minimum initiatives focus on things like finances, which money is moving back and forth. And so the World Bank is involved. You've got some countries that are very active, like the United Kingdom, in pushing forward what's called the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative. It's a bit jargony, but that's its title. And President Obama announced a few weeks ago that the United States would try to join and comply with this sort of set of procedures. And what it is you set up procedures and you invite and encourage companies and governments one at a time in different countries around the world to join in these procedures and to collect and release the kind of information that's sort of outlined in the procedures, so that there is the opportunity for people to try to extract more accountability, so that they know where money is coming from, where it is going, what things have been sold for. And some of these initiatives, most of them focus mostly on money and financial flows, but a lot of activists in different parts of the world would like that to be an expanded agenda, to say, so we know more about what's in the contract, so we know more about what's been promised, so we know more, so we can use different information to verify whether or not our own governments did what they promised to do, rather than just make promises and then not follow through. Lots of sort of NGO activists, of course, but the sort of big game in Washington right now is that in the financial reform bill, the so-called Dodd-Frank Act, passed a while ago, there are requirements for all companies that are listed publicly to report the amount of money they pay foreign governments for natural resources, oil, gas, and mining and minerals. And so those rules have been tied up. In fact, they're delayed. They haven't been issued yet. So there's a lot of concern, both in the business press, places like Bloomberg News and the New York Times, as well as with a lot of the activists, that the rules are kind of still being written far behind schedule, and they're not sure who is active in those circles. So one of the challenges here is that the rules for transparency right now are being written in an intransparent manner, but there is the expectation, because it's in the law, that they will be released and they will move forward. In the European Union, the European Commission has a proposal that's gone through a couple of sets of revisions that will hopefully come out in a similar fashion to the Dodd-Frank requirements. There, too, there's a lot of controversy, a lot of firms lobbying in one way and others, a lot of activists involved. But so I would say that right now there is a lot happening in both Brussels and Washington. Outcomes are a little uncertain, but at the end of the day, it looks like there will at least be higher requirements for financial information than there are now or than there were a couple of years ago. If you look at the idea of transparency, not only would we like to have more information publicly available about money that changes hands, but we really don't know enough about the environmental and labor rights around dozens or hundreds of mining sites, oil extraction sites, gas extraction. So if we wanted to think about how would we gradually raise standards of regulation so that people were protected and so that local communities were developed, you'd need a lot more information about all those kinds of conditions. And the amount of money that changes hands is important, but we want a lot of other kinds. And so activists, I think, have worked to expand this agenda to say, we really need companies and local and national governments to report, to collect and monitor these sorts of things as well around resource extraction, and then publicly make those data available. That might lead also to better regulation. If we had better information on which to base what companies are doing and what they should be doing, and what governments are doing and what they should be doing, we might actually end up with better governance.